Robert O'Hara and Sullivan Jones. Welcome to Token Theater, friends. I'm very excited to have you both here. So for people who I guess like have lived under a rock for all of eternity, what is Streetcar Named Desire? Like, describe it to me as if I had never heard of it before. Although I even was gonna wear like a Blanche Dubois forever t-shirt today.
This would have been the perfect chance.
I'll let Sullivan take that question.
Oh my God. Now I realize why I was invited to this, to answer the questions that Robert doesn't want to answer.
All of them, exactly.
God, I mean, where to start with that? I mean, Tennessee Williams, let's start there. Let's just start with the writer who I feel like exudes and drips with that kind of Southern, syrupy, sensual, dangerousness that feels like it's of a different era, because it is of a different era. I don't know, Robert, you jump in here, man.
Well, Streetcar is an American classic play about two sisters having to negotiate a husband and brother-in-law in New Orleans. It is rife with a melodrama and violence and alcoholism. And it is both glorious and terrifying at the same time.
I love the description so much. So now we're gonna go into like the not softball questions anymore. And I was really, I was listening to it and on my headphones a lot. And it reminded me of when I was 15 years old. I lived in Honduras where I was born. And my grandma took me and my brothers to New Orleans. And like, I was like such a nerd that the first thing I put in my suitcase was my copy of Streetcar. And then I made my entire family spend a whole afternoon trying to find the Elysian Fields address from the play. and it didn't like exist. Like obviously, like we got there and it was like some like government building or something. That was like horrible. But anyway, listening to the play like that took me back then. And I was very grateful because like theater obviously is something that we don't get to carry around in our, like in our heads. So can you talk a little bit about what the transition was like from, like it's not happening on stage at Williamstown anymore, into like reimagining it as is it like an almost different kind of world for you also?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Sullivan's experience was from preparing to go on to a production, then to go into a sort of audio world, but I never I didn't think of that. Like I thought, okay, so we're not doing Streetcar. Okay, fine, let's move on to the next thing. That was the pandemic. The last thing I was thinking about, like, how are we gonna? Oh my God, I can't do this play. And so when it was presented to me, I was like, why would I want to do that? Like, I'm planning to do a production. Why do I want to do audio? And so after having several conversations with Audible and with Williamstown Theatre Festival, I thought, and also some of the actors, I thought it might be actually a great opportunity to explore the play in preparation for a possible production. Because also myself being a writer, the language is glorious. And the writing itself is just completely and totally beautiful. So, that was one of the exciting things about going into Streetcar Audible. I had to let go of the idea and had let go of the idea that we were going to do a production. So there was no attempt to sort of equate them or go, oh, how can I make this audio production into what it was supposed to be on stage? But Sullivan, what was your experience?
Yeah. First of all, I was like, oh, damn, we're not going to be able to go to Williamstown and do it at such a great, place to put on theater. But then also there's a pandemic that's completely turning the world upside down. So who the hell cares? And then to have Mandy and Robert and the whole like Williamstown team come back and say, we're going to switch it up and try this different medium through which to tell the story, I thought was amazing. And I've done like a fair amount of voiceover work in the past 5-6 years, mostly commercials and some animation and stuff like that. And I think what I what I missed doing this play was the pretty basic, obvious answer, like being in the room with other human beings. That was just really hard to simulate, you know, when you're at home. You have to listen, obviously. That's kind of the only thing you can do is listen. But you're missing so many sensory inputs when you're, like, I was under a bed sheet basically recording the play. So it's pretty astonishing what Robert and co did with it. I mean, it sounds like you feel like you're in the world.
Absolutely. Robert, so your directorial work kind of seeks to make people uncomfortable in like self-reflective ways. I'm thinking maybe Slave Play, for example, or Raising in the Sun even had a couple moments of self-reflection amongst like white audiences. And I want to know, were you able to bring that type of directorial angle to this audio production, or is that something that maybe you weren't as able to strongly do?
You know, I don't know if I'm seeking to make you uncomfortable. I just know I'm not seeking to make you comfortable.
Okay.
And so you should, and if the opposite of that is uncomfortable, then I guess so. But that's not the goal. The goal is just making sure that I'm not here to make you comfortable. And I think that there's no way, I mean, this Streetcar, I mean, it was very uncomfortable at times because we had to deal with the facts. And the facts of it is that there is an alcoholic. There are two alcoholics in the play, and one of them is raped at the end of the play, and the other one is assaulted. And also, both of the men in the play that are the leads, including Sullivan's character, plays in an assault on a woman in the play. And those are real things that really happen. And so I didn't want to sort of romanticize that or gloss it over just because we were doing it for the ear. And so I think that most of the times when the play is done, there is a sort of softening, there is a sort of romanticizing the violence and also the alcoholism. And we deliberately want to fall into those spaces and make those spaces more specific in a way. And I think that that shows in the recording.
Absolutely. I feel like some of the most iconic lines of the play, like Stanley yelling Stella, is like right after domestic abuse. And yet it's still something that we like highlight and prioritize as like an iconic moment in theater.
We have prioritized the rapist, basically, and icons a rapist. And you know what the play does, it leaves the hitting of Stella, the beating of Stella off stage, and it leaves the rape off stage too. So basically what we have is this sort of a man who has just beat his wife that we didn't see, but he's repentant. And he's, you know, no shirt on, screaming in the middle of the rain, if you would take the movie, for his wife. And so all we get is the repentant husband who says he'll never do it again. We don't get the brutality of watching him do what he did. You know, can you imagine if we saw Brando beat and actually assault a person, how that would color the history of that character, and maybe even his own relationship to the play. So yeah, I think that was something that I definitely did not want to sort of play into. I wanted to actually center Blanche and center Stella and their experience. And, you know, they don't cut to black when you're hit or when you were assaulted. Nothing cuts out, you know, you are actually still in that assault, right? And so that was important for us to investigate that, as I would do it on the stage also.
And it's like so perverse almost, because we did get to see Brando like decades later assault someone on screen, like on camera, and then like have people like defend him for doing it. It's like the artistic choice or whatever. So that's like yeah, it's like very I don't know, like a lot to think about. But I was, you know, I've always like really had a very soft spot for Mitch, and I wanted to like kill you, Sullivan, at the moment when, you know, it was like when Mitch goes to see Blanche, and then like he says almost to himself, but also like to the audience, I guess, like, I really wasn't planning on like seeing you again, right? And it's a moment that like twists your heart because it's so sad, but it's also like revealing Mitch not as this like good guy that, you know, that he's been presented as so far, but also like another like version of Stanley, and another like man who just wants to use this weak women. And I don't know if I want to know specifically about that line because it was so haunting. It was so beautiful. And I almost like also wanted to throw my headphones at the wall. But can you talk maybe a little bit about giving like different emphasis then to a line like that on stage you would have had to like yell, for instance, and you get to whisper almost with the microphone.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the term Stanley, using people. I mean, I feel like central to the story is just a kind of a hunger from every character and an unabated, uncensored, deep-seated hunger. And we all, as human beings, have that, whether it's a sexual pang or actual appetite, or you want your career to be something, whatever it is. And these men in this time, the way that they kind of embraced that or dealt with it was to just sort of take what they wanted or use people, like you said, to sate their needs. And so Mitch shows up, and one of the things that I liked kind of about the scene and working on it, and as Robert said, what we got to do was sort of basically like table work. You know, we had a week of rehearsal and then we recorded it and that was it. But like you said, Mitch shows up and he's sort of like, I didn't want to see you, but now he's here. And you don't really know why he's here or what he wants. And Stella's kind of the motor of the scene and Mitch is kind of quiet. So you're kind of like, what does this guy want? And eventually it gets revealed in the end. He says, I come to get what I've been missing all summer. But to answer the technical question, I really liked being able to kind of play the levels, the lower levels, because you're right in front of the microphone. You don't have to project and hit the back wall like you would in an 800-seat theater. So that was really just using the equipment that we had and letting the intimacy do what it did by just whispering, basically. I don't even remember what I did on the line, but I imagine I did something like that.
It was great. It worked for me. So congrats on whatever it is that you did.
You know, one of the one of my favorite moments is in the play, which I would never have imagined by just reading the play or even seeing the movie, is the moment between Mitch and Blanche when he comes in and they're talking about his mother, and Mitch breaks down talking about his mother. And while at the same time it's so moving, I also see or sense Blanche's manipulation going on when she goes, oh, you're going to be lonely, right? Like that's, but so at the same time, she's feeling for him, but also she's working in her head how this may work out to her benefit. I think it's actually quite beautiful. I love to find what I call the beauty in the horror sometimes, and sort of, you know, finding those moments that are seemingly really sort of gorgeous to look at, but there's something just a little bit twisted in it. And that was one of those moments that I think Audra and Sullivan caught. Whether they were conscious of it or not, I think it is certainly there.
And like, I think that's like a really kind of interesting point as well, because when you think about the different moments that are a little more intimate on stage, I think you had mentioned, for example, the domestic abuse is like off stage, but you put the sexual assault on stage and you put it on like pretty up and center in this audio recording. And I wanted to know what were your intentions in that way. If, for example, you didn't want to put the domestic abuse as on stage, but the sexual assault seemed pivotal to the audio production, it seems, especially with some of the like audio sounds apart from sounds of assault, but also I think kind of like hollering and hooting. And so like, what was your angle and aim there?
Well, both of those assaults are on stage in terms of the ear. One is more specific because it is between two people. And the other one, the violence, domestic assault, is there's a whole group of people talking at the same time. So you may not be able to hear it, but I certainly, if I stage it, expect to put it on the stage, because I don't want us to not have that as a part of the context of the story, right? And sort of removing it off. In terms of the sexual assault, those noises that you referred to are written into the script. We normally don't hear them because most people don't do them, but he writes that Stella descends, that Blanche descends into a sort of jungle-like feeling, that because throughout the play, she's been calling Stanley an ape, a brute, a beast, he's primitive, you know, and she does this whole monologue about how, you know, he may even grunt and then kiss you or whatever. So she descends, and it's a part of her protection also, that she turns him into a beast and her being devoured in this sort of jungle feeling. So we played into that. That's also one of the parts that we continue to massage in terms of making sure that we got that sort of the technical quality of it right, because we didn't want it to feel gratuitous, right? And we didn't, but we also did not want it to feel insignificant, because it is basically the turning point of the play, and that they're going to now commit her for the rest of her life after this scene. So my point in doing that scene was to see how can we actually honor the stage directions called for by Williams, which is normally not there, but also how can we go descend into Blanche's brain and her own psyche as it's happening. And so that's where we came from. And I'm still sort of considering, you know, normally we would get a couple of weeks of previews, right? In order for me to sit with it in front of an audience and see if I can tweak it or whatever. So here we were up against a deadline. And once again, we had 7 days of rehearsal and 2 days of recording. So there were certain things that I would still massage in that scene, because I still think that there are places to go in that scene. But that's where it landed in terms of the deadline for Audible. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. And I think it'll be an interesting process to kind of see how you massage that scene over an audio form, but probably you'll have to bring in intimacy coordinators and be a lot more intentional when you do a live production. Have you given much thought to how that might look?
Yeah, well, we had an intimacy director, even on the audio, and we had a fight
Perfect.
director, even on the Audible. And yes, it would have to be much more intentional because it would be physical bodies. Also, I think that seeing it will change the dynamic of how long it needs to last, you know, and how long it can live in the imagination, right? And also what we're also seeing around her is we may also see her mind creating a different space for her physically. So the set itself can change, right? And projections, and also Tennessee Williams does call for projections in his script. There's all this stuff in there. I mean, Tennessee Williams was out of control, of course, but there's a lot of stuff that we just skip over when we read this play that I was kind of exciting to sort of play into in the audio. Yeah.
Can we take just a moment to just like talk about Audra? Because I was like, you know, during the pandemic, like I feel like we get like almost no pleasure from anything. And I was like, holy shit, Audra McDonald. You know, when the first line she utters, like it took me to when I saw her play Billie Holiday, where it was like, I was like, I can see her and I know it's her, but like her voice is suddenly someone completely new. And I don't know if you can talk about what it was like to work with her, and like, did she have that effect on you where she opens her mouth and like your jaw just like falls to the floor and you're like, holy crap.
It was honest. So when we did like a reading of the play, I think very early, and it was one of those readings where you heard and saw, because it was through Zoom, what Audra was doing, and you're like, this is ready made. She could record tonight. And everybody else was kind of muddling through, myself included, you know, what's going on? Who are these people? And Audra was just like, she landed the plane in an ice storm, just like, boom, here we are. And to see that is extraordinary. Like, I don't know what you call it, hard work, call it a gift, call it all those things. But it was pretty, like what she did in the recording, she dialed it up and down a little bit, but it was pretty much like that rich from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I mean, I think that everyone on the Zoom was just like, wait a second, were we supposed to like, because I think there were some lines that she knew. There was something going on that was otherworldly. And we were like, I thought we was just reading this. But all of a sudden, we're sitting here with Blanche in front of, and we're just like, everybody on the that got into the scene with her was like, oh, okay, so we're doing that today. Okay. And this was just, you know, a reading. And I think it was kind of even like a couple of months even before we even did a rehearsal of it. And this was just a cold reading. And she's so modest because she was like, well, you know, I'm gonna try something. I don't know. I hope we're not recording this and what. And it's like, no, it's just like, and I remember she wrote me that morning. She's like, are we supposed to be dressed up or anything? Because I don't know, what are people wearing? And I'm like, I just think that we're going to be reading it. And she came full tilt boogie, ready. And I was like, okay, well, that's why she got 6 Tonys, you know. So that's why.
Exactly.
I'm sure if someone leaks a Zoom, she's gonna win like an Emmy for it, also or something like that. Can, can you talk a little bit about, you know, like working together again? Like, do you have not like a secret language or anything, but you know, like there obviously must be like some like rapport and like something that you didn't get to have with the other cast members. Like, what's that? What was that reunion like for the two of you?
I'll start. I think this has completely been in my own head. I've never told Robert this, but I grew up playing sports with like some, you know, I grew up playing sports. My dad was a very intense guy. My coaches were very intense, and sports culture is very much like, you did it wrong, do it again. And you kind of have to go like, okay, cool, I'll do it again. So there's no, you don't take things personally, you just try and get it right. And what I love about working with Robert is he's very succinct and very clear about what he wants. And I appreciate that he's always, if he doesn't like it, he will tell you, and he'll tell you specifically what it is. But then once he sets those boundaries, he lets you creatively explore. So it's not an overbearing kind of thing. And it's not one of those directors that you work with where you go, what fucking world are we in? What play is this? What year is this? Why hasn't he told that person that they don't know, they haven't said the lines in 2 weeks. He hasn't said shit to that person. You know, he's steering the ship, but he's also creatively entrusting you with your story and to carry your weight. And this is the biggest thing for me, truly, genuinely, a man of such deep integrity. I mean, to the experiences that we had going from off-Broadway to Broadway, producers, press, expectations, casting, blah, blah, blah. But to have Robert at the center of that storm, at the fulcrum of it, and to kind of bring us along and tell us what was happening, what people were saying, what he wanted to do. And every time he said he wanted to do something, it fucking happened, you know? And it was, and he's just a deeply, the word for me is just integrity. He has such deep integrity, and that's what I respect about him, aside from the creative stuff, which obviously he's brilliant at what he does, but he's a good man.
I thought, you know, from the very first, when we started thinking about Streetcar, I knew that I wanted to see what Sullivan would do. I deliberately wanted to have it be that there was something different about Audra and Carla, and that there was something special about them. And so I wanted to have the men not overwhelm the scene by who they were, but to live inside the scene with their acting, you know, which is a different sort of way into Streetcar. So with Sullivan, it was always that, you know, there is a sort of gentleman caller quality to him that always sort of like, it's wonderful to sort of hide a pocket knife as he walks in the door. You know what I mean? And I sense that in him, that he has the ability to morph into what we hope and believe his form and shape should present, and then it is you know, it is able to sort of like deconstruct all of that, right? And so that was what's exciting to me. And so when I saw him, and I think you auditioned with Carla, didn't you?
No, just solo.
Oh, so you didn't have an actress there?
There was a reader, a woman.
I thought that you auditioned with Carla. Yeah, I so it was an instant. I was like, all of what I had hoped and been dreaming about was there, and still not knowing what he would bring to it, but knowing that whatever he brought to it would be tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I when I saw your name, like, I instantly assumed like, obviously he's gonna be like Stanley. So hats off to both of you for, you know, sort of like, no, like we can do way more than what you think we're gonna be doing.
And it's tricky, you know, the casting of the show is tricky once, especially in this play, once you step out of sort of like, let's cast 4 white people in the lead of this play, then you're like, well, wait a second. If I have Audra, who's a Black woman playing Blanche, then am I telling the story of a Black Stanley who is married to a white Stella who is going to rape his Black sister-in-law? Is that the story that I want to tell, right? And then and if Mitch is white, then are we putting a white savior into a situation, you know? So these are all, so I'm not someone that goes, oh, well, let's just cast whoever, and that's the best person or whatever. I'm like, no, part of what you look like and who you are is a part of what you bring to the stage. I don't believe in this sort of colorblind casting. I don't just automatically go blind when I look at the stage, you know? So I want to know what you can bring, how you Stanley being white and Mitch being Black, how that can enhance, and Audra being Black and Carla being white, how that actually can enhance it, and not how we can just ignore it, you know? Because when the playwright was writing, he never imagined that this was going. So we have to imagine it for him, actually, and not just assume that, oh, because it's a great play, all this will work. Because I don't want the audience thinking of a certain thing when they should be thinking of this certain thing. I want you to concentrate on this moment and not worrying about, well, wait a second, why is this happening? Or are you actually saying so and so? So it was very deliberate, my casting, but it was also based on how can I get the most opportunity out of it, and not sort of how can I sort of like hide the fact that we've sort of done a multicultural casting. And of course, the play calls for it. I mean, Tennessee Williams says that New Orleans is a place where the races commingle freely, right? And yet we see a bunch of white folks every time we see this play. And then they have a sort of Negro woman and a Mexican man or Mexican woman or what have you. And I'm like, well, why is it that we're so afraid to sort of make, it is New Orleans, you know? And so why don't we actually dive into what that really meant and how that actually really felt at the time, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even want to tell you how many nightmares like just like Flores para los Muertos line gave me when I was a teenager. And I was like, I'm too old to be scared of this like women who sell like flowers. But yeah, sometimes I still like skip through that scene in the movie because I'm like, I can't deal with this right now. Thank you both for this. And do you want to tell, I'm sorry, I have to do the plug part also. So do you want to tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find Streetcar? Do you have any other projects that are like streamed or like that are going to be out there for people to find? This is your moment to tell them all about it.
Well, you can find Streetcar on Audible. And you can also go to the Williamstown Theatre Festival website, and they will link you to the Audible as well. And you can download it and listen to it.
And for me, I'm fortunate that I have cool things coming up that I don't know if I'm allowed to say yet, but one will be a TV show and one will be a feature film. So keep your eyes peeled.
I want the text immediately.
Yeah. I got you.
Like put it in text right now. Okay, yeah. We won't stay here, but go ahead. Yeah. So thank you so much, you two. This is great. This has been great. You know.
Yeah. Thank you both. This has been a pleasure. Yeah. And break all the legs. If the Tonys ever happen, like you better win all of them also. So
good luck. Yeah. Good luck on the Tony nominations. This was such a great opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Right. Bye-bye.